Welcome to Candid Catholic Convos, a program brought to you by the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg. Our mission is to humanize the Church and help you to grow in your faith, love, and understanding. I'm your host, Rachel Trochet, a cradle Catholic who's only human and struggled with faith on more than one occasion. Each week, you'll hear engaging, down-to-earth interviews and actionable strategies you can implement into your life with ease to help you grow closer to God. If you're ready to open your heart and step fully into the person God created you to be, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Candid Catholic Convos. In the world of radio, it's rare you ever see the face behind the voice. And unless you follow our social media pages, which you should, you wouldn't know very much about me or what I look like if I didn't tell you. Hi, I'm Rachel, a white woman with Italian, Irish, and Norwegian roots. My hair is brown. I'm average height, and lately I've been wearing my glasses a lot more, like I'm supposed to. My husband is a Puerto Rican man with dark hair and a rich complexion. Our 3 boys are beautiful. They're what a casting director would call racially ambiguous because they can pass for both Hispanic and Caucasian, as well as several other nationalities. I had never been exposed to Hispanic culture or style or music or anything before meeting my husband. And for the last decade or so, I've been absolutely immersed in it. It's vibrant, romantic, flavorful, just like my heritage that I've embraced my entire life. I can't wait to shower my kids in theirs and show them all the things that make them uniquely them. And that's the beauty of how God created us. We're each different, fearfully and wonderfully made, with a purpose that is specific to us. But sometimes it's difficult to recognize and appreciate our differences for what they are. Again, I'd never been exposed to a culture other than my own for decades, and I had no idea what I was missing. The reality is, we're all more alike than you think. Today, I'm joined by Deacon Armando Torres, our Director of Culture and Outreach, to talk about the different apostolates we have in our vibrant diocese, as well as a brand new conference for our Hispanic population. Deacon Torres, thank you so much for joining me on Candid Catholic Convos. It's nice to have you back. We haven't seen you in a little while.
All right, thank you so much, Rachel. Looking forward to discussing and having this conversation. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me back.
So for those who maybe didn't listen to the last episode that you were on, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and what your role in the Diocese of Culture and Outreach entails?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So I'm Armando Torres. I'm a deacon assigned to San Bautista in Lancaster, and work here at the. If you want to call it work, I call it as at my ministry in the Culture and Outreach here at the diocese, and it's just to have the awareness of all the different cultures at our diocese beyond the apostolate. So we have the Hispanic apostolate, Vietnamese, Korean, the Black Catholic apostolate, but there's many more cultures as well that are involved in the diocese that I hope to bring and will bring awareness to. So in that process, some of the outreach, it can be very broad, but since we have other offices as well, like Life and Dignity, we have Laity and Family that does an awesome job for other outreach. So a lot of times we kind of work in conjunction, together, with the colleagues. So it's just mostly with the culture, it's just to bring awareness and to our dynamic, variety here at our diocese.
I think that's so necessary anymore because we're such a vibrant diocese. Like we have all races, colors, classes, everything in between. And I think that that's important to have someone such as yourself who's kind of taking the lead on making sure that everybody is being seen. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's, I was born in New York, but I was raised in Lancaster. So I was raised in Lancaster. I'm more familiar with the growth there of Lancaster as far as the Catholic Church. And I think about the Hispanics now, the Spanish community and its growth, and its expansion. Granted, out of 88, 89 parishes, the diocese, technically only 10 are listed as that has Hispanic ministry, so that gives you a broad idea on that it's growing. It's not everywhere. So so we need for the outreach for those that may not be having services in their language or ministering to their language, what have you. But if you go back to the beginning, talking about in Lancaster, at the beginning we had St. Mary's Parish, ministering to the Irish, and then the Germans, at the beginning, years ago, back in the 1800s. And then the German culture, the German community growing. And then, hey, we need St. Joseph's Church, and then St. Joseph's up in Cabbage Hill was made for that community. And then, the community grows. Hey, let's build St. Anthony's because the German community is growing, and then the Italian community, and then the Hispanic community. So it's all growth, and this is we're just still seeing it. And beyond that, even like the Croatian community that I'm even bringing more awareness, hopefully bringing more awareness to myself on how that community is growing and has grown, and pretty recently, not like 100 years ago, but maybe 100 years ago, and as recent as 20 years ago, maybe as recently as 10 years ago, that community is growing as well. So it's ever growing. It doesn't stop.
So September is Hispanic Heritage Month. Talk to me a little bit about specifically the Hispanic Catholic community here in the diocese. And you mentioned that Lancaster is pretty...
There's a large Hispanic community in Lancaster. If we look back at the history of the Spanish community here at the diocese, you think Lancaster, you think Harrisburg and York. So it's ever growing.
Yeah.
As San Juan Bautista, if you think about the Spanish community, how it's serving as far as the apostolate, through its growth, which began like in the 1940s, more awareness brought by the bishops, and it's like more intentional ministering to the Hispanic community through the migrants, the migrant workers and what have you. But, through all these years, San Juan Bautista is the only Hispanic parish in the diocese. There's other parishes that have Hispanic ministry or Hispanic mass, but San Juan Bautista is the only parish community. So yeah, it's growing. Lebanon as well. And then you look, talking about going back to Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th to October 15th, which seems odd. It's not like September 1st to the end of September. September 15th is the independence for these certain countries like Costa Rica, Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua. That's their Independence Day, September 15th. And then Mexico and these other ones follow within that month period, later on, like the 21st of September. So when we look at why is it September 15th or October 15th, well, that's why, because independence, that's when the countries in South America received their independence from Spain. Initially, it was just a week, that was celebrated in our country, and then, President Reagan extended it to a month of celebration. So that's why it is during those 30 days, September 15th through October 15th. The Hispanic community is so dynamic, and I think, and I don't know if this is going to sound a little rough on us Spanish folks or Hispanic folks, but we get it siloed as well. I'm Puerto Rican, but the Hispanic community is not just Puerto Ricans. There's a lot of Mexicans, but Hispanic is not just Mexicans. There's Dominicans, and then there's Cubans, and then there's people from Chile and Peru and Colombia. So it's so dynamic in culture that that's one of the things that even within our culture has learned all the differences, even within the Hispanic community, whether it's from the Caribbean islands, Mexico, even South America. Even in our diocese, it varies, probably even through regions, where we might have more Caribbeans, Hispanic Catholics, Harrisburg, Lebanon, York area. We're down in the southern, like Gettysburg, Hanover, might be more Mexico and South America, not to just silo them that way, but that's just a trend, and it's very dynamic, a very dynamic culture in that aspect, whether it be music, whether it be in devotions, what have you. So yeah, it's a dynamic community.
It very much is. And I love that you brought up just the differences in Hispanic isn't just Puerto Rican or isn't just Mexican. When you said that, it made me think of like the United States. Like we are, people from Philly sound different than people from New York or from the Midwest, or even if you go to New York, like if you're from like different boroughs, mm-hmm. Everybody sounds different. Because my husband always tells me like, oh, now we would say it this way, but in Mexico or in Spain, they would say he used to get in trouble in Spanish class all the time because his Spanish teacher was from Spain. And he's like, but that's not really how you would say it. And she's like, no, but that's how we say it. He's like, no, it's not. So
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And talking about that, I recently have, to help me, again, Puerto Rican raised in Lancaster, and learning my Spanish language, and then throughout my school years, and even as a deacon in the even as a DRE with our parishioners, definitely here through the diocese because of the further outreach. Now you're talking to different Hispanic communities, ethnicities, and so I recently took a course just to learn more about communities. One of the things that in the course that they brought to us was to know your community, whether it's be Caribbean, just to keep it basic, Caribbean Hispanics versus Mexican Catholics, or even South America, even terminology. So to make that impact, you have to, because one word has a different significance depending where you're from, what kind of Spanish nationality you have. So, it's interesting and it's a challenge, but you love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's awesome that you're taking the extra time to kind of learn those differences.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about the difference between, or is there a difference between Hispanic ministry and English ministry other than the language? Because at the end of the day, we're all Catholic. So what, besides the language barrier, or if there is anything other than the language barrier, is there anything that separates us?
Yeah, and that's the one thing that, our Catholic faith is universal, and it's celebrated. There's the liturgy is the same. If you're going to open up with, with the rite of introduction, the hymns, the opening prayer, the greeting, that doesn't change, and that's the beauty of our church. The readings are the same. Whatever the readings for the day for Sunday, it's the same, regardless what part of the world you're at, what part of the language you're speaking. So all that's the same. Now, having said that, the music could be different. I loved when I went to when I was I would go between San Juan and St. Joseph's pretty frequently on a Sunday back in Lancaster. I loved it that I was in St. Joseph's because I love the Gregorian, I love the pipe organ, I love the choir, and I still do. I love it. Here at the St. Patrick's Cathedral, same thing. I love that. And then an hour, half hour later after Mass, and I'm going to the other Mass to attend to the parishioners at San Juan. Now you got guitars, and you have the bongos, and you have this other thing called the weedle that I don't even know. It's just an English word for it. There's different instruments. The maracas maybe. The cowbell. You maybe more cowbell. More cowbell in the Spanish music. So it's clapping. Maybe there's clapping in the Spanish music. More clapping in the Spanish music. So that part, those things are different. Yeah, the celebration of the liturgy, those things could be different. In homilies. Homilies may be more vibrant. The homilies at an English parish, for English homilies, we have patience for, a certain amount of time for homilies. And to be honest with you, if you go to a Spanish Mass and there's a Spanish community there, they expect a 20-minute, 25-minute homily. They're okay with it, where it might not be okay in another culture. But honestly, if you give a 20, 25-minute homily in Spanish, and people love it. If you give them an 8-minute homily, 10-minute homily, they might feel shortchanged. The devotions, people have devotions. I hate to say that one is more devoted than others, because I've seen people that are devoted culturally to their devotions. So I've kind of learned that people have a passion for their ethnicity, regardless of what the ethnicity that is. I really learned, not that I didn't know that, but it really came to light to me when I went to the Celtic Fling, last year. And I was at the Celtic Fling, and I could see, they love their culture. It's not, Hispanics love their culture. So do the Irish, and so do the Germans, and so do, the Italians. And, everyone loves their culture. So I hate to say that, they're very proud. I think everybody's proud of their culture. But the devotions, they're very faithful to devotions, like their Marian devotions. Their Marian devotions are very important. Like in Puerto Rico, it's Providencia. We hear about Virgen de Guadalupe in Mexico because it was very impactful. All the people that became Catholic, that converted to Catholicism, and Virgen de Guadalupe is very well, very well known devotion to the Americas, our mother, Virgen Guadalupe. But in Puerto Rico's Virgen Providencia, you know, that, you know, November 19th, that's, you know, to celebrate, that's their Marian devotion. And Dominican Republic, Virgen de Altagracia, that's their devotion, you know, to Mary. This past January, you know, Bishop Timothy visited Immaculate Conception in York, and we had celebration for the Virgen de Altagracia, the Dominican devotion. And people were, you know, some people were in tears that the bishop went and visited that parish that day to celebrate with the Dominicans that devotion. So, you know, their devotion, in particular devotions, it's there's a uniqueness to that, you know. Sometimes I wish we had the same devotion, not that we would have it, but that they would have the same devotion for the Immaculate Conception. So sometimes it's kind of like, you know, kind of painful because we don't feel the church of December 8th, but we feel the church of December 12th, you know, as Hispanic. So, I mean, I know that's throwing light, you know, throwing a little jab there, but it's true. It's just the devotion is just that extra, it's just that more intent. Even godparents, you know, the meaning of a godparents for the Hispanic, there's another degree of expectation. You know, it's a connect. It's just hard to explain. You know, but you know, godparents are important, and for the Anglos. So I'm not saying that it's not. Sponsors for confirmation, same thing. For the Hispanics, it's like they take it to another level as far as, oh, they're my godparents, so you're like family now. You're my comadre, like co-mother. You're my compadre, my co-father. You know, that's the words that we, you know, if we say, you know, oh yeah, they're the godparent to my child, which is what I would use being raised in the States. So that's what I would say. Yes, Mike is my God, you know, he's the godparent for my child. Where my family, you know, my generation or newer generations, Hispanic generations that still have that culture from their, you know, from their culture, from their upbringing, that closeness of the godparent, a different, more intense meaning for a godparent. They're not the godparent. They're the co-father, el compay. They're the co-mother, comay. You know, I don't know if it's the best way that I can explain it. They're not looking at it as a godparent. They're looking at it as co-father, co-mother. You know, so those are differences there as well.
I love that. It's kind of like my kids call my two best girlfriends. They're not biologically my sisters, but my kids call them Aunt Mary and Aunt Char. You know, it's just it's a term of endearment that just kind of takes it another step further. I love that.
Yeah, my kids, when we brought the way we raised them, they don't call any adult by their name, obviously, and they call them. They're all aunts. They're all their aunt or their uncle. So they call them titi, you know, tia, or they call them tío, but they don't call them, not even Mrs. Like, no, they're tío and they're tia. Yeah, uncle and aunt. Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of really beautiful things, like the different Marian devotions. What's something beautiful about, or that has come from your ministry with culture and outreach, or something that you've learned, particularly when it comes to, I guess, the Hispanic community in our diocese?
I think it's just the devotion, just the devotion and their wanting of celebrating the mass in their language. You know, not at another language, just that, you know, they want to celebrate in their language. There's an endearment to it. You know, there's one of the things that's really growing for the Hispanic community is movements, like the charismatic movement. You know, it's big for them because they get to celebrate more outwardly. You know, and not that everybody does. Not all Hispanics are what you would call charismatic, but the charismatic movement is big. You know, they're the crucillistas, you know, the crucillos, you know, that they're endearing to that. I think it's mostly just a devotion to the faith. You know, even to the Eucharist. You know, there's a huge devotion to the Eucharist as well. I think the outward praising. You know, some things are different even for me. You know, some things are different that I'm not, used to that I'm seeing more of during the Mass. But I think it's just beautiful that how endearing they are to the faith. Some people, I don't know if this is even beautiful, but it's in the sense that we don't know the stories of all the Hispanics, how they've come to the country or how long they've been here, and not know that there's a Spanish Mass, or not know that they can attend different things in Spanish. And when they find out, they're like, oh yeah, I haven't been, I didn't know that, and I've been here 2 years, that there's been different Hispanic ministries in the diocese. Not that that's beautiful, but beautiful in the sense that it's like they found their faith, or like they found their community. Everything else, I won't say like it's not like I'm not surprised or anything like that, because I can't say, oh man, that's extremely beautiful how they do their devotion. I kind of expect that, but the beauty of seeing people finding their communities probably has stood out the most. How much it means to them, how much it means to people.
Yeah, because it gives you that. I mean, I feel like, especially within the last, 5-10 years, and especially with COVID, everything can feel so lonely, and like you don't have a village to kind of walk with you. And then when you find that there is a village of other people like you who believe in a lot of the same things, and in this case speak the same language, it's comforting to know that. Yeah. And it's like you said, like the Mass is the same wherever you go, but just having that extra level of comfort of like, this is a language that I'm familiar with, this is a style that I'm familiar, this is music that I enjoy and I'm familiar with, like that just eases some of the loneliness, I would think. I think you're right. I think that is beautiful.
And that's our faith. If you think about our faith, we all have our personal journey, and we never forget that. But it's always in community. And I think when we have that community, then that even brings it out even more, because that's what we're called to. We're called to community. So when people find their community, which we're called to, then that's very exciting. And you can see it. I'm sure anyone would feel that way, that sense of community. Having said that, one of the things that gradually voicing to the community is how we have to be involved in the broader community as well, especially here in the diocese, that we are, everyone's part of the diocese, not outside of it, not an outside community, various communities, but together. Yeah.
Yeah, together as one. I love that.
Yeah, together as one. So just to give an example, I've been trying to get if we have a PA for March for Life, that's you that needs to be there. Hey, there's the Chrism Mass. Yeah, that's for you to be there too. That's not, hey, we're having the Chrism Mass at the diocese. Hey, did you know that they're having the priest ordination that's coming? Oh yeah, I heard that we're having, as a diocese, the priest ordination, and you should be there. That sense of community. So outside of them finding their language community or ethnic community, which is extremely important for them to realize that, the community is even broader than that. So.
And speaking of community, I understand for the first time on September 7th, our diocese is hosting a Spanish Catholic Heritage Conference. And one of the impact speakers at the National Eucharistic Congress is going to be our presenter. I think this is really cool, because this is the first ever of its kind. And from what I understand, it's going to be said entirely in Spanish. So what can someone expect coming to this conference, especially since it's the very first one of its kind in our diocese?
Yeah, Andres Arango is the gentleman that's going to come and speak with us. He's going to be the main speaker. He's well known in the charismatic movement. He's well known. He's a bishop delegate. He was involved at the Vatican as well, in the planning for like Quinto Encuentro or for the Caris for Cadiz movement. So he's well known, very humble man. He's spoken at different conferences, whether it be English conferences, Spanish conferences. He's from the Diocese of Camden. He's at the Diocese of Camden now. And his wife is also very involved, Katia Arango. very involved with the ministry as well. She's the director for the Hispanic ministry at the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. So he's going to come and he's going to present to us. He's going to speak with us. He's going to speak with us. I think the importance that I want to focus on for this conference is, and yes, I hope to have many more, is our history, for people to know how did this begin? How many bishops have been involved, in this in this ministry? Anglos, Hispanics, Spanish, Hispanic. Many people have been involved with this ministry to grow this ministry, to serve everyone in the diocese. Focus on our formation. What kind of formation do we have in our growth? In our parishes, within our movements, within our Bible studies, within our Legion of Mary, within our Knights of Columbus. There's a couple of Knights of Columbus Spanish councils. So those are important. So he's going to speak in regards to that. And then the other portion is, how do we live that out in community? So that's why, the title is Caminando Nuestra Fe, walking our faith. That's what it's about. It's like, okay, we need to, how does that look like in community? So walking our faith in community, Caminando Nuestra Fe como en comunidad, so we're going to have, lively music. We're going to have mass, we're going to have adoration. We might be missing some of the arroz con gandules, some of the Spanish food. I don't know if we're going to have the Spanish food, but other than that, we're hoping for a nice crowd,
We've unfortunately run out of time, but if you'd like to hear the rest of this episode, you can listen to us anytime on Spotify under Candid Catholic Convos, or you can download this episode from our website at hbgdiocese.org. Thank you so much for listening. Our goal at the Diocese of Harrisburg is to walk with you on your faith journey. So if this episode resonated with you in any way, the easiest way to show your appreciation is by sharing this program with your network or by leaving a review on your listening platform. You can also support us financially by making a donation online at hbgdiocese.org/DAC and clicking the Make a Donation button. Thanks again, and we'll see you at church on Sunday.